The air in my garden, usually a balm, tasted of something else that summer. Not pollen or the damp earth, but a faint, metallic tang on the back of my tongue. I remember tracing the intricate moss paths, a ritual of quiet contemplation, when I first saw them. Not the usual foragers, scurrying after a forgotten crumb. These were different. Their formations held a grim geometry, their movements a stark, almost ceremonial precision. Tiny mandibles clicked, not over grains of sugar, but over unseen borders. They weren't fighting for survival as I understood it. They were fighting for something far more insidious, something that mirrored the dark corners of our own ambition. And watching them, the tranquility of my sanctuary began to fray, revealing a chilling truth beneath the jade-green surface. The first glimpse of the jade path. I remember that summer, when the gentle whisper of wind through the bamboo felt like a premonition. My garden, a meticulously sculpted world of raked gravel and ancient moss, had always been my silent confidant, a place where the world outside ceased to exist. I, a recluse by nature and by choice, found solace in its unchanging rhythm, tending to each stone and fern with meditative devotion. But then, they appeared. Not the usual ants, you understand. Their kind had always coexisted, a fleeting footnote in the garden's vast tranquility. These were different. I first noticed them on the kokedama paths, those intricate mossy arteries I'd nurtured for decades. Their movements weren't the chaotic scurry of foragers, but a chillingly organized ballet. Tiny legions met, not over a crumb, but at invisible lines drawn across the verdant expanse. Their mandibles clicked, not in hunger, but in what seemed like a grim, silent parley. Then a swift, almost ritualistic clash. It was a spectacle of calculated aggression, a miniature war waged not for survival, but for something else. Something unseen, yet profoundly felt. The serenity, my carefully cultivated peace, shattered in that instant. The realization hit me like a cold spray from a sudden storm. These skirmishes were complex, utterly devoid of the desperate energy of the hungry. They were about control, about dominion. And watching them, my fascination curdled into a disturbing obsession. My sanctuary, once a balm, had become a mirror, reflecting a brutal truth I hadn't sought. The whispers of the bamboo root. I leaned closer, my breath held, as the true architecture of their underground world began to reveal itself. It was no simple labyrinth of sustenance, but a network of power lines, each strategic tunnel a contested border. And within this hidden dominion, factions moved with an unnerving precision. I remember observing one particularly formidable warrior, his dark carapace etched with the silver lines of countless skirmishes. I mentally christened him Kageyama, a name whispered from the shadows of my imagination, befitting his silent, imposing presence. His faction, and others like it, fought not for spilled sugar, but for control over vital subterranean arteries. The choke points, the shortcuts, the access to deeper, unseen chambers. Alliances, I watched with a chilling fascination, shifted like wind through bamboo groves, forming and dissolving with dizzying speed. The lower-ranked ants, their purpose seemingly menial, were mere pawns in this elaborate, ruthless dance. They were manipulated, nudged into position, their collective movements orchestrated in a silent, terrifying ballet of influence. It was then, as the hidden depths of their society unraveled before me, that I saw not just insects, but a stark, unsettling reflection of our own ceaseless hunger for power, for control, mirroring the darkest corners of human ambition. The crimson dew of dawn. The summer air, that once gentle breath, thickened into something oppressive, a premonition of the cataclysm brewing beneath my feet. I remember the evening, bathed in the fading light, when the quiet hum of the colony snapped. The old queen's reign, once an immutable decree, had begun to fray, her authority visibly diminishing under the weight of restless ambition. It was then the challenge came, not as a whisper, but as a guttural, rising roar from the depths of their earth-bound empire. And then, the war. It wasn't a battle. It was a fever dream, a horrifying living tide that surged over the garden floor. Thousands upon thousands of tiny bodies erupted from their hidden tunnels, a desperate, chaotic maelstrom of black and crimson. Limbs tangled, mandibles tore, a horrifying ballet playing out on the dew-kissed ground, each movement a silent scream. The precision I'd once observed dissolved into pure instinctual savagery. By dawn, the jade-green moss of my sanctuary was not just damp, but stained, glistening with a terrible, unholy red. When the first tentative rays of morning light touched the carnage, the maelstrom had subsided. From the ruins of that unprecedented violence, a new silhouette emerged, stark against the crimson backdrop. Younger, more agile, her reign wasn't merely inherited. It was forged in blood, secured by the sheer brutal will of 1,000 tiny warriors. Tranquility of my garden was gone, replaced by the chilling certainty that true power, even here, was never given, only taken. Echoes on the stone lantern. The silence that descended upon the garden after the last great skirmish was not one of peace, but of a chilling, suffocating quiet. It hummed with a different kind of tension, a victorious stillness. Looking back, it felt less like observation and more like a fever dream, watching the cycles of power reset before my very eyes. The old order had been swept away, but what emerged was a new regime, even more ruthless in its consolidation of control. Their formations were no longer frantic, but precise, militaristic, a cold, unyielding efficiency that spoke volumes without a single clash. Borders were redrawn, enforced with an unseen swiftness, and the faint metallic tang returned, a permanent fixture in the air. It was then, as I watched their minuscule empire solidify, that the pervasive sense of unease burrowed deep within me. This endless, primal pursuit of dominance, this ceaseless scramble for power, felt like a chilling mirror to our own human condition. The grand narratives of history, the rise and fall of empires, all seemed to echo in the dust motes above those tiny, clicking mandibles. My tranquil garden, once a sanctuary of green and growing things, was irrevocably changed. It now held a secret darkness, a shadow that elongated, stretching beyond the boundaries of the anthill, whispering of an ambition far older and far more insidious than I had ever dared to imagine, undefined.